Well, we will go ahead and get started. Hopefully others will join us shortly. My name is Alicia Brewster, and I am acting as the director for South Carolina Interfaith Power and Light. And I am just so excited about this third cohort that we are doing in partnership with South Carolina Audubon and the South Carolina Commission for Minority Affairs. We launched in January of 2021. Here's Kay again. And in addition to those two organizations, we also had Moms Clean Air Force originally, and the Academy targeted faith leaders, and faith leaders are really anyone who considers themselves to be a leader in their community, guided by their faith and their desire to care for people and care for the planet. Topics build a foundation for the work that you do in your community. And they include things like policy, politics, and advocacy. You learn about elected offices, advocacy basics, and then participate in this year practical application in areas such as conservation. So we'll be doing some advocacy at the Capitol this year, and we will also be working on projects in our own communities. The program's aim is to empower or to provide the tools really for you to use your power and all of the many assets in your community to build awareness in your respective communities so that you better understand major state and federal policies and that you're able to incite collective action. In addition to the virtual training, you will also receive this wonderful toolkit that Audubon created, I believe, just a few years ago. And we will also have opportunities to be able to take bird walks with our legislators. So there are a lot of really fun, for some of us maybe, and interesting ways for us to really make this practical and do some things that will get us out into the community. So testament to the power of this program was one of our former civic engagement participants. She's a graduate of the program, Lorana Hughes. She is currently working with elected officials, businesses, and nonprofit partners to build a community faith-led partnership that finds solutions to food and housing insecurity for marginalized community members in the Aiken area. She says she was first attracted to the idea of a faith leaders oriented Civic Engagement Academy because it perfectly aligns with her philosophy of community engagement. She believes that the unique ability of the faith community to address social and environmental justices was very encouraging. So I think that we will continue to see opportunities like that begin to burgeon throughout the state as more people begin to connect, and through networking, building relationships, we will be able to go a lot further, hopefully a lot quicker. And with that, I will ask Brenton to introduce himself and to maybe open the floor for any comments before you get started.
So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brenton Brown. I am the Chief of Staff for the South Carolina Commission for Minority Affairs. We are a state agency founded in 1993. And what we do is we focus on the state's ethnic minority populations. And by ethnic minority, that encompasses African Americans, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, Native Americans, and Latino Americans. As such, we have various program managers in program areas where we try to connect these communities with resources. Some of my colleagues are actually here on the call. Tim McCrae, who does our faith-based outreach across the state, but primarily for right now in the PD area. And also Mr. Yvonne Segura, who's our Hispanic Latino outreach person, and just got elevated to a director here in the agency as well over our outreach for the state. So a lot of people ask, you know, what does CMA do? The Commission for Minority Affairs. And I always tell them we do two things. We're the state's official point of contact for research and data on the minority communities here in South Carolina. And we also connect those communities to resources. So I always tell people, just remember R&R, research and resources. And that's essentially what we do here across the state of South Carolina. Very quickly before I get started, you know, we're a very small group. There's about 7 of us here on the call. So If you'll just take a moment to introduce yourself. I know some people have been doing that in the chat box, but before I jump into the presentation, the first part on today, if we could just have people just kind of introduce themselves, who you are, the organization you're with, and what brought you here today. The first person I see on my screen is Ryan.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan Curry. I am the associate priest at Holy Cross Faith Memorial Episcopal Church in Pawleys Island. I live in Georgetown. I also am the co-founder of our local chapter of PFLAG, which is an LGBTQ advocacy organization. I'm also the executive chair of the board of directors for a low-income housing development, a HUD development for seniors on the church property. So I try to stay active in the community, and I'm hoping to learn more from all of you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Bradley?
Hey everybody, my name is Bradley Williams. I am the campaign coordinator at Audubon, South Carolina. So I help us do a lot of our advocacy and grassroots outreach work, as well as helping with policy at the state level. I'm based in Columbia, South Carolina, but I'm often found in different parts of the state, the PD, the low country, the upstate. You can find me pretty much anywhere any given week, but very excited to be here. Very excited to give a presentation on the next month's session. So very much looking forward to today's information. Thank you.
Thank you. And he'll, as he mentioned, he'll give some great information. Some very great information coming soon. Next, Tim, would you like to introduce yourself? You're on mute, Tim.
How you doing? I'm Tim McCraig again. I'm the faith-based coordinator for South Carolina Commission on Minority Affairs, and excited to be here this evening.
Next, we have Kay.
Kay Hightower. I work for the South Carolina Department on Aging. So I wear a lot of hats. I've been working with Yvonne on something, and he mentioned your name. I'm Breton, so I'm really excited to meet you. And Tim, one of the hats that I wear at the Department on Aging is that I am in charge of our faith initiative, and that we have. So I would love to offline to make a connection with you to talk, to speak, faith outreach initiative manager to faith outreach initiative manager. And Ryan, I'm the Department on Aging. So I was really excited to reach out to hear about what you do and to hear what you do. And also, in addition, that I am on the board of the Interfaith Partners of South Carolina, which is a group that has the 12 mainline faith traditions. And I think Yvonne and I were going to talk about that, because many of those faith traditions, particularly the Sikh faith tradition and the Hindu faith tradition, have have a lot of Asian populations in those things. And Yvonne and I were going to talk about that. But I think our agencies were really excited about the partnership that Yvonne and I have developed, and we would love to work with you. And Tim, I would love to work with you and everybody here. So I'm just really excited. And I know nothing about birds, so this is a wonderful opportunity. And Alicia, do you work with Brandolin? Are you from Aiken?
I'm not. I'm located in the upstate in Greenville.
Oh, you're in Greenville? Okay,
Mhm.
Because I think that she mentioned, Imani is her group, and I think she mentioned, that it would be a good thing. I know they're working on emergency management, so I was in a meeting with them. But those are our responsibilities, because we are a cabinet
Absolutely.
level.
Yes.
See how we're all getting at, we are the department. We are a
yeah.
cabinet level agency, and Connie Munn is our director. So I'm just really happy to be here, and I would like to thank Yvonne for inviting me.
Thank you for making that connection. Reverend Bozeman is a great friend. So good.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Okay. Yvonne?
Hey, I'm Ivan Segura. I'm the program manager for the Hispanic Latino Affairs Division here at the Commission for Minority Affairs, and I'm entrusted with fostering the social and economic development of Latinos in the state.
Thank you. And then I see Glenda. If you're able to introduce yourself.
Thank you. I had a couple of problems getting on, but hello, everyone. My name is Glenda Morrison Fair, and I reside in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm in the field of education. I specialize in trying to make an impact with young people and helping them to get to the next level. And I serve on the school board representing District 23.
Thank you for being here on today. So I want to thank everyone for being here. So without further ado, I am going to let me check my mic level. Is everyone able to hear me? Good to go?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, let me do this because I know sometimes the video messes with the audio. I'm going to stop my camera, but I'm going to share my screen because I want to talk about civic engagement. And give me one moment. It will pop up. Okay, is everybody able to see the screen? Okay, all right, we're good to go.
Yes.
So thank you. So the Civic Education and Engagement and Education Academy is a brainchild of some staff members here at the South Carolina Commission for Minority Affairs. A lot of the work that we do is not in the office, of course. It is being out in the community, helping the community, helping various community members find resources to meet their needs. And as a part of that, as we were out in the communities across the state in our 46 counties, we encountered many people who were community leaders or just community members who just did not know a lot about government, whether it's at the state or federal level or the local level, and did not necessarily know how to navigate through the various levels of government to be able to get the resources that they may need. So we created this academy to kind of fill and bridge that particular gap. So on today, what I will talk about is going to be parts 1 and parts 2, which is I'll give you an agency overview, and then we'll talk about the civic engagement piece. And then I'm going to talk about really the meat of it is going to be part 3, which is South Carolina's elected officials in their offices and voting as well. And then I'll talk about part 4, the advocacy and policy piece on another day. So once again, just a little bit about the commission. We were established by state statute in 1993 to be a catalyst for socioeconomic change in the state's ethnic and racial minority communities. We operate with the vision that all ethnic minority citizens of the state of South Carolina will be treated equitably and achieve economic prosperity through sociocultural awareness, collaboration, policy change, and research. And finally, the most important piece, or one of the most important pieces, as a state agency, we are nonpartisan and non-biased. We have no political affiliation. This is information that is shared just to educate communities, to give them the tools that they need to be able to advocate on their behalf. Overall, what we do is we identify and examine factors that lead to inequities in ethnic minority communities, and we work to actively engage to alleviate these inequities. And many of the ways that we do this is by partnering with other state agencies or other government agencies at the federal level or at the local level. And we try to involve community members, community leaders, and other stakeholders, such as those in the business community. They try to solve problems that are being faced by the state's ethnic minority citizens. So getting into the meat of why we're here today, civic engagement. It all focuses around this one particular question. What does it mean to be civically engaged? That's a very important question that needs to be answered. And so civic engagement essentially happens when people and communities are, number one, knowledgeable on areas of governance, knowledgeable on electoral and legislative processes, and able and willing to hold public officials accountable. Some areas of civic engagement And these are really kind of the in the weeds type stuff that people can do on a daily basis in their communities to make sure that they're being engaged. Number one, the decennial census that comes around every 10 years. Of course, we just had the 2020 census, which has also affected redistricting, which is now going through the court system here in the state of South Carolina. But ensuring that your community has a complete count on the US Census is a way to be civically engaged. The reason why is because the census determines political and economic power for the next 10 years. Also, something as simple or maybe not as simple as serving on a jury, making sure that when you receive that jury duty notice, that you don't put that to the side and take it lightly. That's an important way to be civically engaged. Also, understanding various political entities, understanding the power that the federal government and its agencies have, and also understanding the power that the state government and local and municipal government is going to be something that's going to be very important to understand as you navigate advocating on behalf of the needs of your community. And then, navigating what we call the branches of government, which a lot of people learn, of course, in high school civics, the judicial, legislative, and executive branches. So understanding when is it time to go to the judicial branch or the courts, understanding when it's time to contact your legislators, or understanding if something is already in place, which is the proper state agency which falls under the executive branch to go to. So at the bottom of the screen, what you'll see is that advocates should work to ensure the protection of civic and political interests at all three levels, at the local level and also at the federal level as well. So when I first talk about some of South Carolina's federal and state public officials, and I want to start off with the federal government. Of course, at the local level, we have school boards, city council, circuit courts. Then we'll talk about state level governance, and then we'll talk about the federal government, which we'll talk about right now. So our federal office holders, we want to start with the United States Senate. This is on the legislative side for the legislative branch. US senators hold 6-year terms. Every state in the United States has 2 senators for a total of 100 senators. The senior senator is simply the person who has served in office the longest. So it's not necessitated by age. However, it's determined by how long that person has been serving. And the junior senator has simply been serving for the shortest amount of time. So in our state, our senior senator is Senator Lindsey Graham, and our junior senator is Senator Tim Scott, who's been serving for about 10 years less than Senator Graham. Their duties are to simply draft, debate, and pass legislation. And the qualifications are to be at least 30 years old, a US citizen for at least 9 years, and also a resident of the state in which you want to represent. Next, in the US House of Representatives, we have 7 members here in the state of South Carolina, and this is based upon our census data, our population. If you take the 7 members plus our 2 state senators, you have a total of 9, and that equals our 9 electoral votes for the Electoral College when we are voting for the office of the president once every 4 years. But like their Senate counterparts, the US House of Representatives, they serve 2-year terms. Their duties are to draft, debate, and pass legislation. However, the qualifications are a little bit different. Instead of being 30 years old, you have to be at least 25 years old, a citizen of the United States for at least 7 years, and also a resident of the state in which you represent. Next, looking at state government. I want to first look at our legislative branch, and we have what's called a bicameral legislature, much like at the federal level, which simply means that we have 2 houses. The upper house is also known as the Senate. In South Carolina, we have 46 counties, but we also have 46 senators. It's important to note that even though these 46 senators have single member districts, they do not encompass a singular county. So you have some senators who have parts or a whole of 4 or 5 different counties. But we have 46 senators along with 46 counties. Each senator represents a little bit over 110,000 people. And of course, that's determined by the population counts from the census. At the state level, they serve 4-year terms. Like their federal counterparts, they draft, debate, and pass legislation. The qualifications are slightly different. You must be a US citizen, a resident of the district in which you want to represent, and you also must be at least 25 years old. The leadership for the Senate of the state of South Carolina is known as the president, and this individual is elected by senators at the beginning of each two-year session. The lower house is known as the South Carolina House of Representatives. There are 124 representatives across the state who represent approximately 41,000 people. They serve two-year terms, and their duties are to draft, debate, and pass legislation. The qualifications for this office are slightly different than their Senate counterparts. You must be a U.S. citizen, a resident of the district, but also you must be at least 21 years old to be a member of the House of Representatives. And finally, the leader of the House of Representatives is known as the Speaker of the House, and they are elected as well by their counterparts at the beginning of each two-year session. Next, we're going to the executive branch. The executive branch is headed by the governor. Our governor currently is Governor Henry McMaster, and our lieutenant governor is Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evatt. These individuals serve four-year terms, of which they'll be up for re-election this coming November. Their duties are to submit an annual executive budget and ensure that state laws are enforced. They also receive written reports from state agency heads on any aspect of their duties. And they periodically address the General Assembly on the state of the state and make recommendations concerning legislation. The qualifications for this office is that you must be a U.S. citizen, a resident of the state for at least 5 years before an election, and at least 30 years old. Also, under the executive branch, you have various offices. These are not all the offices under the executive branch, but these are the main ones that impact people's lives on a daily basis. We have the Office of the Attorney General, which is currently being helmed by Alan M. Wilson. The duty of the Attorney General is to be the chief prosecuting officer of the state of South Carolina with the authority to supervise all criminal cases in courts of record. And this is per the South Carolina Constitution. Next, we have the Secretary of State, who is Mark Hammond. The Secretary of State is responsible for maintaining the public records, the commissioning of notaries public, issuing commissions, filing oaths of office for state officials, and also the incorporation of municipalities. Next, we have the Office of the Comptroller General. This is simply the state accountant and the fiscal watchdog who is responsible for supervising state spending and keeping an accurate accounting of state agency expenditures. Next, we have the Office of the Treasurer. The Treasurer is the chief banker for South Carolina that's responsible for investments, cash management, and safeguarding the state's restricted funds, and also overseeing the assets of the state's two retirement systems. Then we have our Superintendent of Education, Molly Spearman. The Superintendent of Education is the chief executive of the Department of Education, and they are responsible for the supervision of the state's public schools and funding that those schools receive from the federal and state governments. And finally, we have, once again, I'm sorry, instead of treasurer, that's supposed to be the Adjutant General down at the very bottom. The Adjutant General is Major General Roy McCarty. He is the head of the state's military department and oversees the Army National Guard, the South Carolina Air National Guard, and the South Carolina State Guard. And the Adjutant General for South Carolina is the highest ranking uniformed officer in the state. However, this individual is answerable to the governor. And once again, that is the Adjutant General for the state of South Carolina. This is just a graphic to kind of show you all the various state agencies here in the state of South Carolina, of which there are well over 100. That's also including our public institutions of higher education, just so that people have a graphic description of all the various state agencies here in the state of South Carolina. Finally, we have our judicial branch. Our judicial branch is going to be helmed by our Supreme Court here in the state of South Carolina. There's one Chief Justice who is currently Chief Justice Donald Beatty, and also 4 Associate Justices. These individuals serve 10-year terms that are staggered, and their duties are to hear cases on the death penalty, state utility cases, public bonded indebtedness and elections, and orders limiting state grand juries and relating to abortions by minors. Right under our Supreme Court, we have the Court of Appeals. We have one Chief Justice for the Court of Appeals, that is Chief Judge Bruce Williams, and 4 associate judges. These individuals serve 6-year staggered terms, and their duties are to hear most types of appeals from the circuit and family courts, with the exception of cases that are within the exclusive jurisdiction of the state Supreme Court. The court sits with 3 panels of judges of 3 each, or they can sit in a panel in bank, meaning as a whole or as one. And then under those 2 courts, the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals, you have our state trial courts. Those include our circuit courts, which are courts of general jurisdiction, which hear a wide variety of cases. Our family courts, which hear cases involving domestic or family relationships. You then have masters in equity. These are appointed by the governor with advice and consent of the Senate, and they have jurisdiction to matters that are referred to them by the circuit courts. You also have our probate courts, and most individuals in the state are going to deal with our probate courts. You go to the probate court when you want to get a marriage license, if you have someone in your family who has passed away and you're dealing with their particular estate, or with the guardianship of incompetence or other matters. So of all the courts that we're going to talk about, most people are going to encounter the probate court more so than any of the others. Then you also have magistrates courts. Those are courts that have criminal trial jurisdiction of offenses that are subject to a fine not exceeding $500 or subject to imprisonment or confinement not to exceed 30 days. And then finally, you have municipal or city courts with jurisdictions over cases that arise from city ordinances. And once again, the restrictions on a fine not exceeding $500 or 30 days confinement. At the county and municipal level, you have various offices. It's important to note that the smaller the office, the bigger the impact. And what I mean by the smaller the office, the lower down you go on the chain from federal to state, all the way down to the city level, the more impact those particular offices are going to have on your life. And also at the same time, the easier it is for you to be able to get in contact with these individuals. So at the county level, we have our solicitor or the district attorneys, of which there are 16 circuits across the state of South Carolina. You also have our sheriffs who are popularly elected. You have clerks of court, you have county commissioners, magistrates, probate judges, register of deeds, soil and water conservation district members, treasurers, school board members, and county councilors. So once again, those county offices, of which there are a variety, impact your life much more than what you'll see at the state or federal level. And then of course, going all the way down to the municipal level, you have our mayors and city councils for all the various towns and villages and municipalities across the state. It is much easier for you to get in contact with these individuals in their elected capacity than it would be for you to get in contact with your state senator or even your US senator. So once again, you want to be aware of who these individuals are and also at the same time engage with them as well. Some of the best ways to stay in contact and to also stay informed is to go to the state of South Carolina's website, which is sc.gov. If you want to learn about the various agencies, you can simply go to sc.gov/agency-listing to look at all the various agencies and go to their websites. One thing I would highly suggest is to download the state legislature app. You can go to your app store and simply type in South Carolina Legislature. We have one of the best apps and also one of the best websites for a General Assembly in the United States. You can follow your individual state senator, your individual House of Representatives member. You can follow particular bills. You can also follow committees. So I highly suggest going on to your app store, downloading that app, and then also following your elected officials and also the committees that they're on, or following an individual bill that may be of interest to you. To learn more about the executive branch, you can go to governor.sc.gov. sccourts.org is for our judicial branch. And then just to learn a little bit more about the counties of our state, you can go to the South Carolina Association of Counties, or if you want to learn more about the resources that are offered to our towns and cities, please contact the Municipal Association of South Carolina. So I want to talk about voting here in the state of South Carolina. Because of state and federal laws, it's important to know what protections you have as a voter here in South Carolina. You have the right to vote in South Carolina, free from intimidation. You can also vote if you are in line by the time polls close, and in South Carolina, polls are open from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. If there is a question about your registration or your eligibility status, you can ask the poll manager or the poll worker to receive a provisional ballot. You can fill out that provisional ballot and then make sure that that ensures that you have voted, so that you can go clear up any irregularities that may exist and make sure that your voice is still heard. You also have the right to receive assistance due to a disability, illiteracy, or language barriers. You can also choose who assists you in voting as long as that individual is not your employer or your union rep. They want to make sure that there's no undue influence by having one of those two individuals assist you at the polls. Also, you can vote from your vehicle, which is called curbside voting, if you are over the age of 65, or you have some sort of physical disability that prevents you from standing in line. And finally, you can vote after you serve a felony conviction if you have served your entire sentence, and this includes probation or parole, and you must have re-registered with your local county board of registration in elections before you're able to vote again. So once again, in South Carolina, if you are an individual who has been a part of our criminal justice system, after you have served your time, and that includes probation or parole, after you've served all of your time and fulfilled your requirements to the state of South Carolina, you can go to your local county board of elections and registrations and fill out an application to re-register to have the right to vote. So who can vote in the state of South Carolina? You must be registered at least 30 days in advance of an election. You must be a U.S. citizen. You must be at least 18 years old on or before an election. And that's a very important note. You don't have to be 18 by the time you register. However, you must be 18 by the time that you vote. So a lot of communities will do voter registration drives and include those who may be high school seniors or even some high school juniors who are 17 years old, but by the time an election rolls around, they'll be 18. Also, you must be a resident of the county and the precinct in which you are registering. And finally, you must not be under court order declaring you mentally incompetent, nor can you be confined to any public prison resulting from a criminal conviction. As I mentioned before, you must have fulfilled your entire obligation, criminal justice obligations to the state of South Carolina before you're eligible to vote. To register to vote, you can do so simply by going to the State Election Commission's website, which is scvotes.gov. You can register to vote online very simply. You can also mail in a registration, email a registration, or fax a registration. Or if you want to speak to an individual in person, you can go to one of the 46 county board of registrations and elections. And all this information is available on the State Election Commission's website, which is scvotes.gov. For more information on doing so, once again, go to scvotes.gov. In South Carolina, we do have a photo ID requirement. You must have a driver's license, a DMV issued ID, a federal military ID, a US passport, or you can get a voter registration card that includes your photograph. And finally, students who live in South Carolina, so if you're a college student that lives in South Carolina, you must register using your physical address of the college or living facility to be able to vote in the state of South Carolina. So it's important to note that students are able to register and vote. However, they must use the physical address of their dormitory or other living facility while they are on campus. Absentee voting in the state of South Carolina. There are over 18 acceptable absentee voting categories in the state of South Carolina. There are some bills in front of the General Assembly right now to change some of these categories. But as of right now, some of the ones that are the broad ones that cover a lot of people, you can vote absentee in South Carolina if you're a member of the Armed Forces or the Merchant Marines, and you're serving outside your county of residence. This includes spouses and dependents on the day of election. If you are a citizen overseas, so if you go on vacation or if you go to visit family or if you're overseas on business and you're not in town to vote on election day, you can vote absentee. If you are physically disabled, you have two options. Once again, you can vote curbside, but if you're not able to vote curbside, let's say you're hospitalized, you can also vote absentee. Students who are attending school outside their county of residence, including their spouses or dependents, can also vote absentee. Persons who, for reasons of employment, are not able to vote. So if your job requires you to work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., the times in which polls are open, you can do so. And there's a variety of other reasons, a large one of which is serving as a juror in a state or federal court, or if you have the death of a loved one and you're attending to family needs. So once again, currently there are 18 acceptable reasons to vote absentee in the state of South Carolina. However, this information is going to change because there are some bills in front of the General Assembly that change some of the effective reasons for voting absentee in South Carolina. And then finally, once again, I talk about this several times because as we have talked to various people across the community, the question always comes up about those who have been in our criminal justice system and voting. So just finally, just remember that you can vote if you were convicted of a felony. However, you must have finished your sentence. You cannot vote if you're incarcerated. You cannot vote if you're on probation, probation or parole. However, if you were convicted of a misdemeanor, you can vote if you were released from jail. If you were convicted of any crime that involves a violation of an election law, and this includes a misdemeanor, you have to have finished your sentence. You cannot vote if you're incarcerated. And once again, you cannot vote if you're on probation or parole. And once you become eligible to vote, you must re-register to vote at your county board of election. So this concludes the presentation for today. I'm going to stop sharing and see if there are any questions that someone may have from the information that was covered.
To kick off with a question about the voter legislation that you were mentioning and just any other trends. I guess those are two separate questions. So with voting legislation in particular, if you can speak to some of the legislation that's currently being discussed, and then also if there are any trends that you're seeing in this particular session.
So for this session, one of the major bills that goes to affect the State Election Commission, and many people may not be aware, there's a 5-member commission for the State Election Commission. Those are currently appointed by the governor. Then you also have some who go in front of the Senate as well. There is a bill right now, unfortunately, the number of that bill escapes me. However, that bill is going to change the composition of the State Election Commission for the General Assembly to have more say. It will also expand the number of seats from 5. The last number that I saw was 9. However, that number could change. And so you have, it allows the members of the General Assembly to be able to look at elections a little bit more closely in South Carolina. What it will also do is kind of centralize the power of the Election Commission when having 46 counties in the state and also 46 county boards of registration and elections. There are some differences in how Abbeville County might handle elections versus Aiken County. And so one of the bills that's in place right now is to kind of have some uniformity when it comes to how elections are run in the state of South Carolina, and also reconfigure the powers of the executive director for the State Election Commission. There are some other bills that are looking at how general elections are handled in the state of South Carolina, of which people always ask me, what is the General Assembly going to do? We're at week 4 or week 5 for this session, so it's too soon to tell exactly, what's going to happen, what they're going to do. So it'll be better for me to answer that question probably within the next few weeks, because we'll have a clearer picture of what bills are going to advance or what bills are going to kind of get stalled at the committee level or subcommittee level. But the biggest one I think right now is the one that is going to retool the Elections Commission to have the General Assembly have a little bit more oversight and a little bit more say in how the Election Commission is performing its functions. Let's see if there were any other questions by any of the other participants.
Brenton, I had a question actually. If someone wanted to find a list of any kind of like boards at the county level or state level that they would like to join, do you know the best place to go to do that?
Yes, to look at any boards or commissions in the state of South Carolina, that's an excellent question that I actually answered for a community member this morning. I am going to share my screen in one moment. What they should do is you want to go to governor.sc.gov. Go to the main page. Once you go to the main page, which is the governor's webpage, if you look on this blue banner here, you just simply hover over executive branch and click on boards and commissions. What it will do is it will take you to the website for the boards and commissions, of which there are 250 statewide boards and commissions across the state of South Carolina. Many of these are vacant. Many of them have commissioners or board members who are serving expired terms. So they need people to actually, apply for these particular openings. The easiest way to do that is click right under here. How do I know which boards have vacancies? You click on that link and scroll down. You can simply hover over here and it'll give you a list of all the vacancies for boards and commissioners in the state of South Carolina. And actually they updated this on yesterday. So there are about 17 pages of vacancies for boards and commissions. Make this a little bit larger across the state of South Carolina. Everything from the Atlantic Interstate Low-Level Radioactive Waste Compact all the way down to the Glenda University Board of Trustees. So this is an excellent resource, and I will place this link in the chat box.
Thank you, Brenton.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions?
I just wanted to chime in on the boards question. If you look on the far right column, it says who appoints the boards. So some of them are appointed by the governor, and some of them are appointed by the General Assembly, in which case you would probably want to contact the delegation of whoever's the head of the delegation of the area where you would want to do it, because even in the governor's office, they really look to the delegate, they like referrals from, because some of them are pretty regional, like seat 6. That usually probably means the 6th congressional. It's the third. See, that's the 3rd congressional district. You got to try to figure out where the board is and who would be the right person to contact. See, gubernatorial, and some of them were, like I saw, where you would do the delegation. Like the Board of Elections, I think that's the delegation that does those, or that used to do those. So it depends on what board it is.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning that. That's some excellent information. And also along those lines, people don't realize there are 250 boards and commissions across the state. You have a ton of vacancies within those 250 boards and commissions, but there's essentially one person in the office that handles all the traffic that comes in for people who are interested in a vacancy. So, once again, Kate, thank you for that information on, being diligent, looking at, it's a gubernatorial appointment, but also at the same time, looking at what area or region is covered and who you might need to contact to help you kind of facilitate that process. So thank you very much for that. Are there any other questions? I know we're expected to go till 1 o'clock and we're a few minutes before that, but I wanted to make sure that I answered any questions that anyone may have.
I really enjoyed your presentation and I learned a whole bunch. My question is, I mean, I know that this is just one presentation in a series, which I think is wonderful, but what's the goal? What's the overall goal, in this series of presentations?
So
And how can we help support your goal?
Okay, yeah. So let me start with the second half of your question first. Just let people know that this academy exists. So if we need to do something with your agency, we're definitely willing to do that. This of course is something that we offer as a free service, being a state agency. But the ultimate goal for this one is really twofold: is to educate people about the various levels of governance and how they can advocate for themselves. As we found out, as we were going into the communities, people were saying, "Hey, I'm having a problem with, with water. My water being contaminated, or there being some sort of environmental defect, or I want to learn more about conservation." And a lot of times, what would happen is people would want to immediately contact, Senator Tim Scott's office, or Senator Lindsey Graham's office, or contact, Representative Nancy Mace, or Representative Joe Wilson, or Representative Jim Clyburn. And a lot of times what they will find is they would immediately, after being connected to those particular offices, people would tell them, "We're not necessarily the best office for you to contact because we don't have jurisdiction over this particular matter. You would need to contact somebody at the county or the municipal level." And so we really did this because we saw that there were a lot of people who wanted to advocate for better change in their communities, but just did not know the first step to take. So that's why we broke this up into really two parts: the elected officials and voting, and then also the second part is, after you're aware of who those elected officials are, what their duties and responsibilities are, how you can engage with them to get the change that you need.
I know we're getting ready to go, but also don't forget your sister or brother state agencies. Because, for example, if there was a light, like you just gave the example that there was something environmental, I might want to call Keisha Long at DHEC. If it's a meal, and the person is above the age of 60, you might want to contact me, because and then maybe for the next part of this or something that we could talk about having other state agencies involved, because Yvonne has done a magnificent job educating me by what you all do, but to learn how we can all help each other, because a rising tide lifts all boats.
Oh yes. So thank you. Now that I know who you are, you're the first person from the Department of Aging that I met. So we'll definitely be in further contact. So yeah, that's an excellent idea. We do have some partnerships with other agencies. We work with Employment and Workforce, Department of Commerce, and some others, but that's a great idea. And we definitely look forward to working with you in the future.
And I also want to chime in as we wrap up. Kay, you brought up a very, very good point. So in addition to the presentations from the Commission for Minority Affairs, we have partnered with Audubon to do the conservation piece and to also put everything together. So South Carolina Interfaith Power and Light is the faith community's response to climate change and to environmental injustices in our communities. And we offered this partnership, bringing together of various organizations to be able to provide the education that a lot of people are not aware of, how to even engage with our government entities, but then also allow the networking to happen. Because you're right, there are some people who want to do, to be able to improve conditions, and it's related specifically to your role within your agency. And so we want to make sure that we're making those connections. So if you have not already seen There was a survey that was sent out yesterday, and that survey is a way for us to be able to collect information about what our participants are interested in. So what are the things in your community that you want to work on? Because that would allow us to be able to help make the connections to the agencies and the organizations, some of them maybe even nonprofit organizations that could help you with connecting the dots in your community. And with that, it is 12:59. Our next session is Advocacy 101. And then we have an opportunity to go and get trained with Bradley on lobbying. So we have Conservation Coalition Lobby Day on March 22nd. And then on April 8th, we will be putting it all together. So please do make sure that you complete the interest survey so that we have an idea of what it is that you are specifically interested in, because it's going to be tailored to those interests. Also, I want to acknowledge again that we have an elected official on the line with us, Ms. Glenda Morrison Fair, who's the school board trustee in my area in Greenville County. And so, Ms. Fair, if there was anything that you wanted to comment on before we close out, I wanted to give you the opportunity, and then I'll just close out with a reflection.
Not necessarily comments, but I always enjoy these sessions. And because I have a heart for children, I am trying to, in my mind, come up with some type of strategy or program where we can make sure that young people have an opportunity to see this video or to see the forum that you've put together, because I think it's so important and it has a lot of reinforcement points. So I'm trying to come up with a buzz or a program that I can make sure that I steer young people in this direction. Thank you for everything you do. The forum was excellent.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. And thank you for your service.
Yes, it was excellent. And I look forward to coming back next week. Hopefully we'll be able to get everybody in the room next week without any hiccups. So with that, I want to close out with just a reflection. George Washington Carver, who many of you are familiar with, was a prolific scientist. He revolutionized agricultural science with his cultivation of soil enriching crops like peanuts and soybeans to revive Earth that had been depleted of nutrients from cotton farming. He was way ahead of the curve. Many of us today are working towards many of the things that he began really evangelizing almost 100 years ago. He was an active conservationist and steward. Carver wrote just 2 months before his death that plants are just as sensitive to narcotics and drugs as a human being. He suggested things like compost, nitrogen-filled plants, and manure as a better alternative than the depleting practices that they were using at the time. If you were to ask him how he came to know so much about the natural world, he would tell you about the hours and the days he spent with God and in the woods. So as we seek answers to many of the extraordinary challenges that we face due to changing climate, due to a pandemic, due to our country reckoning with our historical, racial, and economic injustices and other social justices, may we seek out in our own faith traditions, the giver of truth. And as we find truth, may we seek out justice. And as we seek out justice, may we be the light that leads to healing and reconciliation in our communities. I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your afternoon, and I look forward to seeing you next month.
Everybody,
Thank you
so much.
Thank you. Y'all take care.
Take care. Good to see you, Emma Grace. And Amazi, hi there. How are you? AMAZI? Hello? Well, I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you for attending.